Why They Secretly Resent You. Have you ever walked into a room, said nothing wrong, and still felt the chill of silent judgment? Why do certain people dislike you without reason, without words, without warning, without cause? What if their hatred says more about their insecurities than your behavior? Now, let's face an uncomfortable truth. Some people will dislike you instantly, intensely, and silently. You'll never quite understand why. You try to be kind. You're respectful, even quiet. But the cold looks, the distant tone, the subtle pushback, they still come. And the question starts to echo in your mind. What did I do wrong? But here's the twist. Most of the time, it's not what you did, it's what you triggered in them. That quiet resentment, you feel it often has nothing to do with your actions, and everything to do with what your presence awakens in others. Maybe it's envy they won't admit. Maybe it's a sense of inadequacy they haven't faced. Or maybe it's just the discomfort of seeing someone who carries themselves with peace while they carry chaos. This isn't just about curiosity, it's about clarity. Because when you understand why others hate without cause, you stop internalizing it. You stop shrinking yourself. And you start walking through life with unshakable calm. In today's video, we'll explore 9 powerful, often hidden reasons why people secretly dislike or even resent you, and how to respond like a Stoic, with strength, with stillness, and without apology. Let's begin. Fun 1. Envy and jealousy. Let's start with one of the ugliest and most silent forces in human nature, envy. It wears many masks: jealousy, resentment, passive-aggressive behavior, but at its core, envy is simple. It's the pain someone feels when they see something in you that they wish they had in themselves. You've probably felt it, that unspoken tension, the way someone's mood shifts when you speak about something good in your life, the subtle disapproval when you're praised, the withdrawal when you're centered. You didn't offend them, you didn't harm them, but somehow your presence alone is enough to trigger their hostility. Why? Because envy doesn't need a reason, it just needs a mirror. When someone is unhappy with their life, your success becomes a reminder of everything they feel they've failed to achieve. Your calm becomes a reflection of their chaos. Your confidence becomes a threat to their insecurity. And when admiration turns sour, it breeds a quiet contempt. Instead of using your growth as inspiration, they let it expose their own stagnation. And that pain often transforms into sabotage, whispered gossip, backhanded compliments, undermining your progress with a smile on their face, but bitterness in their tone. But here's where the Stoic clarity kicks in. Their envy is not your responsibility. Your presence is not a crime. Your success is not an attack. And your light is not something you need to dim for someone else's comfort. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't worry about what's beyond your control." And envy what others feel about your life is exactly that. Out of your hands, out of your reach. And frankly, not your problem to solve. It's tempting to shrink when you're resented, to downplay your joy, to apologize for your progress. But don't. That's how you lose yourself in their wounds. And you weren't born to carry the weight of someone else's discontent. The Stoic path is different. You don't react with ego. You don't respond with anger. You observe with distance. You detach without hate. And most of all, you stay grounded in who you are, no matter how loud their discomfort gets. Because envy can only harm you if you let it in. Now that we've explored the corrosive roots of jealousy, let's move to the second hidden reason why people treat you with resentment. A far more common one: insecurity disguised as judgment. Part 2. Misunderstandings and poor communication. You might think that only serious conflicts damage relationships. But the truth? It's often the smallest cracks that break the foundation. A single look, a missed text, a tone of voice that felt colder than it was meant to. These subtle, everyday moments, when misunderstood, can slowly breed hostility. And before you even realize it, someone begins to distance themselves from you, not because of something you did maliciously, but because of something you never even meant. At the core of many broken connections lies a simple truth. What you intended and what they received were not the same. Miscommunication doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers through awkward pauses, defensive replies, or an emotional coldness you can't quite explain. What starts as a tiny gap in understanding soon becomes a chasm filled with false assumptions. You may be seen as arrogant, cold, or dismissive when all you were trying to do was be honest, or maybe just tired that day. Effective communication isn't just about choosing the right words. It's about tone, timing, empathy, and, most importantly, listening. Truly listening. When we fail to listen actively, we miss more than words. We miss the emotion, the context, the unspoken. And when others feel unheard or misread, their perception of us begins to shift. Now imagine that happening repeatedly. One small misunderstanding after another. It compounds. They build a story in their mind, a narrative about you that's based not on who you are, but on how you made them feel unintentionally. Over time, this can create a version of you in their mind that has very little to do with reality. They may start to assume negative intentions behind every word you say. They withdraw, their tone sharpens, and eventually, you're dealing with silent resentment, built entirely on misinterpretation. That's why awareness is critical. Because if you're not intentional about how you communicate, and more importantly, how you listen, you may unknowingly create tension in the very relationships you want to preserve. So here's the insight. The enemy isn't always malice. Sometimes it's simply a missed signal, a misunderstood sentence, a silence that should have been a conversation. Understanding the impact of poor communication doesn't just help you repair what's been lost, it helps you prevent unnecessary hurt before it begins. And now that you see how misunderstandings can quietly erode trust, it's time to explore another hidden source of resentment tone that has nothing to do with what you say, but everything to do with how you shine. Part 3. Differences in core values and beliefs. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a river. They can see each other clearly. They may even speak the same language, but no matter how loud they shout, their words never truly land. Why? Because beneath them runs a current far stronger than language, the current of personal values. We all carry our own internal compass, shaped by our upbringing, our culture, our traumas, and our triumphs. That compass guides what we believe is right, fair, respectful, wrong, lazy, or even offensive. And when someone else's compass points in a radically different direction, even the most innocent interaction can feel like a threat. The tension doesn't always arise from politics or religion. Sometimes it's about how you define success, how you raise children, how you view money, or how you prioritize rest. You may not even realize you're stepping on someone's value system until you feel a subtle shift, coldness, discomfort, withdrawal, and suddenly the relationship feels heavier, more fragile. Why does this happen? Because to many people, values aren't just opinions, they're extensions of identity. So when you question someone's belief, intentionally or note, can feel like you're questioning their worth. And this is where things begin to break down. Instead of curiosity, we default to judgment. Instead of dialogue, we retreat into our corners. Minor differences are exaggerated. Small disagreements become personal. And over time, that gap between two people, between two worldviews, grows wider, harder to cross.
Resentment begins here, not in big betrayals, but in the quiet judgment that says, they're not like me, and that makes them wrong. But Stoicism offers us another way. Epictetus reminds us, every person acts according to what seems best to them. What does that mean? It means that every value, even the ones you can't relate to, comes from someone's unique lived experience. Their perspective, their framework, is not a flaw. It's a product of their journey. When we understand that, we stop needing agreement to offer respect. This doesn't mean you must abandon your values. Not at all. But it does mean you don't have to treat every difference as a threat. You can hold your ground with grace. You can stand firm in your beliefs without turning others into enemies. Because the moment we stop trying to win every argument is the moment we start building bridges. And those bridges don't just foster connection, they disarm resentment. They allow both sides to be seen, heard, and understood, even if they never fully agree. Now, imagine what could shift in your relationships if you approached value conflicts not with force, but with perspective. What kind of peace could emerge if you remembered that no two people are built from the same blueprint? When you do that, when you choose empathy over assumption, you don't just enrich your worldview, you protect your peace. And you protect the people in your life from becoming strangers over things that don't have to divide you. And speaking of invisible forces that shape perception, let's now turn to a more subtle but surprisingly common reason why others might secretly dislike you, even if you've done nothing wrong. Part 4. The influence of rumors and gossip. There's a strange and unsettling reality we all have to face at some point. People can hate you without ever truly knowing you. And often, it's not because of anything you've done, but because of what someone else said you did. Welcome to the shadowy world of rumors and gossip, where truth is optional and perception becomes reality. This is one of the most common and destructive forces behind unprovoked hostility. Someone hears a story about you, usually exaggerated or taken out of context, and without ever asking for your side, they decide who you are. Before you can say a single word in your defense, you've already been tried, judged, and convicted in the court of public opinion. Like wildfire, gossip spreads faster than fact, stronger than truth. It travels through casual conversations, vague warnings, and hushed tones that say, I shouldn't be telling you this, but... And just like that, trust is corroded. Respect is replaced by suspicion. People begin to look at you not as you, but as the version of you shaped by someone else's narrative. And here's the terrifying part: most gossip doesn't even need evidence to take hold. It just needs to feel true. If it aligns with someone's bias, their past experiences, or their insecurities, then it sticks. Why? Because gossip feeds on fear and curiosity. It's seductive. It gives people a sense of power as if knowing something secret about you elevates them, even if it's a lie. That's why rumors aren't just spoken, they're spread, and with every retelling they evolve until the truth is completely unrecognizable. Sometimes you're painted as the villain in a story you weren't even aware existed. The consequences of this can be brutal. Social isolation, lost friendships, stalled opportunities. Even your career can suffer not because of anything you did, but because someone else decided your story for you. And worst of all, you're not fighting a real version of yourself. You're fighting a distorted image, a shadow that looks like you, but isn't you. So what can you do when this happens? First, remember this. Rumors are never about truth, they're about control. Those who spread them are often insecure, threatened, or simply addicted to drama. They manipulate perception to gain attention or to tear someone else down because it distracts from their own emptiness. Second, don't fight gossip with gossip. Don't play their game. Instead, live with integrity. Let your actions speak so loudly, so consistently, that they drown out every lie whispered behind your back. People may believe gossip in the short term, but character always wins in the long run. As Marcus Aurelius taught, the best revenge is to be unlike those who wronged you. That applies here more than ever. While others twist stories in the shadows, you remain transparent in the light. While they weaponize suspicion, you embody calm consistency. It won't fix things overnight, but over time, truth becomes undeniable. Let those who know you see the real you, not the version stained by rumor, but the one forged in resilience. And most importantly, remember this: you don't owe anyone a performance to correct their assumptions. The only thing you owe is to live with dignity, honesty, and clarity. That's how you rise above the fog of gossip. Now, as we move forward, what happens when the negativity isn't based on lies, but on how you carry yourself? When your success, your strength, or your calmness becomes the very thing that unsettles others. Part 5. Personal insecurities and projection. Sometimes, the hostility you encounter from others has little to do with who you are, and everything to do with what you unintentionally reflect back to them. One of the most overlooked but powerful sources of resentment is personal insecurity, when someone's unresolved inner conflict silently turns into outward hostility. People who don't confront their fears, failures, or self-doubt often end up projecting them onto others. They see in you what they feel they lack. They perceive your confidence as arrogance, your success as a threat, your peace as provocation. And so they lash out not because of what you did, but because of what they feel when they're around you. Seneca once observed that we often hate in others what we fear in ourselves. This is projection in action. It's a defense mechanism that allows someone to cope with their own inadequacy by turning you into the villain in their story. Picture this. Someone is struggling in their career, overwhelmed, unsure, stuck. Then they see you, excelling, focused, clear in your direction. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel small. Instead of asking, "What can I learn?" they think, "They must think they're better than me." It becomes easier to resent you than to face themselves. Your mere existence becomes a mirror they don't want to look into. This dynamic isn't limited to careers. It shows up in relationships, health, appearance, mindset, in the area where someone feels behind, and you seem to have something they lack. And when this projection goes unchecked, it can turn into bitterness, jealousy, or outright hatred. But here's the truth you need to remember. Their insecurity is not your fault. Their resentment is not your responsibility. You didn't cause their wounds. You're just the one standing close enough for them to project onto. That's why taking their behavior personally is a trap. When you absorb their negativity, you make their problem yours. But when you recognize the root of it, the insecurity behind the aggression, you can respond not with guilt or self-doubt, but with composure. Projection says more about them than it ever will about you. So, the next time you feel confused by someone's coldness or hostility, pause. Don't rush to fix it. Don't lower yourself to gain their approval. Instead, ask yourself, what might I be triggering in them that they haven't dealt with? And then, stay grounded in who you are. Because when someone is committed to misunderstanding you through the lens of their own fear, your only job is to remain committed to your peace. Part 6. Lack of empathy and understanding. In an ideal world, every relationship would be rooted in empathy, a deep and genuine effort to understand each other's pain, choices, and intentions. But the real world rarely gives us that luxury. One of the most overlooked sources of resentment is a simple, silent absence. The absence of empathy. When someone is unable or unwilling to step into your shoes, to see the world through your perspective, a barrier forms, not a dramatic wall, but a subtle one, almost invisible at first. But over time, it thickens. And soon, every word you say is misunderstood. Every action is misread. Every silence is filled with suspicion. Empathy isn't just about feeling what someone else feels. It's about recognizing the invisible context behind their choices. Without that recognition, people begin to judge based only on what they see on the surface. A cold glance becomes an insult. A forgotten message becomes betrayal. A firm boundary becomes arrogance. And all of it? None of it real. People who lack empathy often default to black and white thinking. You're either good or bad, right or wrong, with them or against them. They lack the flexibility to understand that most of life lives in the gray, that mistakes don't always mean malice, that distance doesn't always mean rejection. This inability to appreciate nuance creates distorted stories in their mind's narratives where you become the villain without ever knowing why. And the most dangerous part? These stories feel true to them. Because in the absence of empathy, false judgments become facts. Assumptions become identities. Stoicism teaches us that our perception is everything, but it also warns user perception can be flawed. As Epictetus said, we are disturbed not by events, but by the views we take of them. A person who sees the world only through their own lens, without ever cleaning the glass, will misjudge not just you, but everyone. Now, here's where it gets deeper. A lack of empathy is often rooted in self-centeredness. People so wrapped in their own problems, insecurities, or superiority complexes that they become blind to the humanity of others. Narcissism, entitlement, emotional immaturity, all of these are symptoms of an empathy deficit. And what happens next? They see your success and feel threatened. They see your struggle and feel nothing. They see your boundaries and take it as rejection. Not because you hurt them, but because they never learned how to look beyond themselves. It's important, very important, that you don't take that personally. When someone resents you without cause, it's often not about you at all. It's about what they can't understand, or won't take the time to understand. You just became a mirror, and what they saw in it wasn't flattering. So what do? You don't stoop to their level. You don't beg to be understood. You don't try to explain your soul to someone committed to misunderstanding it. Instead, you stay rooted, grounded, calm. Let your actions reveal who you are. Let your peace speak for you. And if they come around one day with clearer eyes and an open heart, great. But if they don't, you keep walking. Because your peace should never depend on someone else's ability to understand you. Part 7. Competition or rivalry. There's a quiet poison that seeps into relationships, not always loud, not always obvious, but deeply corrosive. It's called rivalry. And if left unchecked, it transforms from subtle comparison into full-blown resentment. We see it everywhere. At work, among friends, even within families. People measuring their worth not by their own growth, but by how much further ahead or behind someone else stands. A harmless comment becomes a threat. A promotion becomes a wound. A compliment given to someone else starts to feel like a personal insult. And slowly, the desire to improve gets replaced by something darker. The desire to see the other person fail. At its healthiest, competition can be motivating. It can push us to rise higher, aim further, work harder. But when it mutates into obsession, when your focus shifts from building your path to blocking someone else's, that's when resentment is born. A slow, simmering kind that doesn't just want to win, it wants the other person to lose. This happens most often when someone feels chronically overshadowed, when no matter what they do, someone else always seems to get more recognition, more praise, more affection, and instead of using that as fuel to grow, they internalize it as injustice. Why then? Becomes the mantra. That should have been mine. It gets even worse when they believe your success isn't deserved. Maybe they think you didn't work hard enough, or you had advantages they didn't, or you simply don't deserve the life you have. And when that thought sticks, hatred isn't far behind. Marcus Aurelius warned that rivalry, if not reined in by reason, can lead people into dangerous waters. Sabotage, defamation, gossip, personal attacks masked as casual remarks. Because when someone's entire self-worth is built on comparison, your success becomes their threat, and your downfall becomes their relief. But here's the irony. The more they focus on bringing you down, the further they drift from their own growth. They stop climbing their own mountain and start trying to pull you off yours. And that's when they loosen not to you, but to themselves. So, how do you deal with it? First, by recognizing it. If someone treats you with unexplained hostility, undermines your efforts, or always seems to be competing with you even when you're not competing with them, it's likely rooted in rivalry. But don't play their game. Don't meet their resentment with your own. Don't let their obsession become your distraction. Instead, stay grounded in your path. Celebrate their wins if you can. Ignore their digs if you must. But never, ever lower yourself to their level. Because the minute you do, you validate their comparison and you lose sight of what Stoicism teaches. As Epictetus would remind us, "What concerns me is not what others say or do, but what I do." You don't need to prove yourself to people consumed by competition. You only need to prove that you're above it. And if you find yourself feeling that rivalry within, you need to confront it. Ask yourself, am I using this feeling to grow? Or am I feeding a resentment that will shrink me? Because rivalry, unchecked, becomes a cage, one that locks you in a cycle of needing to be better than someone else instead of simply becoming better than you were yesterday. So choose growth, choose integrity, choose your own lane, and stay in it with quiet, unstoppable consistency. That's how you rise without stepping on anyone. That's how you build a life worthy of real respect. And most importantly, that's how you stay free. Part 8. The influence of social expectations. There's a quiet force that shapes more of our lives than we realize. It's not always aggressive. It doesn't always shout. But it's there constantly pressing on our choices, whispering in our ear about how we should live, who we should love, what we should do. That force is social expectation. You felt it, haven't you? That invisible tension when your decisions don't quite fit the mold. Maybe you chose a career that others find strange. Maybe you live in a way that doesn't align with tradition. Maybe you've built a life that makes others uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because it's different. And then comes the backlash, the judgmental looks, the whispered conversations, the subtle coldness from people who can't say it out loud, but who disapprove all the same. But here's what you need to understand: most of that negativity, it has nothing to do with you. It's a projection of their fear. When you defy social norms, when you walk a path that breaks from what's familiar, you don't just live your truth, you expose theirs. You hold up a mirror that reflects the rigidity in their thinking. And for some people, that's unbearable. They see your freedom and feel threatened. They see your individuality and feel challenged. Because if your way is valid, then maybe, just maybe, theirs isn't the only one. And that uncertainty shakes them. So they respond the only way they know how, with resentment. But don't take it personally. Their discomfort is not your responsibility to soothe. Their narrow worldview is not your burden to carry. You didn't come here to live someone else's life. Stoicism teaches us to separate what's in our control from what isn't, and the approval of society, the expectations of others, that's not in your control, but what ices your response to it. You can choose to shrink yourself to fit in, to conform, to stay quiet, to live a life that earns nods but empties your soul. Or you can choose to live fully, even if it means walking alone for a while. Because here's the truth, this life is yours, entirely, completely, unapologetically yours. Every step you take toward authenticity is a rebellion against the weight of tradition that was never meant for you. Every decision you make that reflects your values, not theirs, is a vote for your own freedom. Yes, they may not understand. Yes, some might talk behind your back, but none of that defines your worth. The only approval that truly matters is the one you give yourself. Seneca once wrote, "If you live according to nature, you will never be poor. If according to opinion, you will never be rich." And what he meant was simple. When you chase society's validation, you will always be bankrupt. But when you follow your own reasoned path, you will live in abundance even if the world fails to see it. So the next time someone frowns at your choices, ask yourself, am I living for their comfort or for my truth? Because the road to peace doesn't lie in meeting expectations. It lies in letting go of them. And once you do, you'll discover something radical. That the real strength isn't in being accepted, it's in being free. Part 9. The lack of recognition. There's a quiet kind of pain that most people carry in that isn't loud, dramatic, or easy to spot. It's the ache of being overlooked, of giving your best and receiving silence in return. Whether it's in the workplace, in your family, or among friends, this need to be recognized, to be seen, appreciated, and validated is deeply human. We want to know that what we do matters. That someone noticed the late nights, the quiet sacrifices, the effort we gave without asking for applause. But what happens when no one sees? What happens when your contributions are ignored while others get the praise? Slowly, bitterness sets in. Not because you wanted to be the center of attention, but because being invisible hurts. And if left unchecked, that invisible pain morphs into resentment, especially when those around you seem to receive recognition for doing far less. This is especially true in high-pressure environments, competitive families, office politics, friend groups built on performance instead of connection. In places like these, the hunger for recognition becomes a quiet war. A war that turns admiration into rivalry, contribution into resentment. But here's the Stoic truth. Recognition is subjective. It is fleeting. It is inconsistent. It is based not on fairness, but on perception and often bias. As Epictetus taught, we should not try to seem good to others. We should simply be good. Because if your peace depends on whether others notice you, then your peace is no longer yours. It's borrowed, conditional, and unstable. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. Recognition is nice, but respect from within is essential. So what do you do when you feel ignored? You don't beg for attention. You don't spiral into self-doubt. You breathe, you ground yourself, and you ask, am I proud of what I've done? Because that's what you can control. And everything else? That belongs to them, not you. You also create boundaries, not to shut people out, but to protect your peace. Because some people, caught in their own insecurities, will never see you clearly. Their judgments are distorted by jealousy, by comparison, by fear, and their inability to recognize your worth doesn't erase it. In fact, their blindness says more about them than it ever could about you. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from the need to be recognized by those who are too distracted or too damaged to appreciate you. Not in anger, but in quiet strength. Seneca once wrote, no man was ever wise by chance. The wisdom here is this: stop trying to please those who haven't done the work to understand your value. Because you didn't come here to perform, you came here to live. So let them overlook you. Let them misjudge you. Let them ignore what they can't see. You keep building. Keep showing up. Keep creating a life that doesn't need applause to be meaningful. Because real recognition, the kind that matters, doesn't come from a crowd. It comes from the mirror. Part 10. Conclusion and final insight. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with something simple but powerful. No matter what others may think of you, no matter how unfair the judgments, how cold the silence, how sharp the criticism, the truth is, it's not always about you. Often, the way people treat you has less to do with your actions and everything to do with their own pain, their own battles, their unresolved insecurities, their need to feel significant, even if it means tearing others down. So instead of carrying their projections as your burden, carry yourself with clarity. You are not defined by someone else's misunderstanding of you. Walk your path with integrity. Speak with kindness. Live with authenticity. These are not just abstract virtues, they are your armor. They are your compass in a world filled with noise, comparison, and unseen tensions. And in the moments when someone dislikes you for reasons that don't make sense, pause and remember, what they think of you is often just a reflection of what they fear in themselves. So continue forward. Cherish those who see you not because you impressed them, but because you were real with them. Surround yourself with people who respect your boundaries, celebrate your strengths, and accept your imperfections, because those are the people worth holding on to. And more importantly, be that kind of person for yourself. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In other words, you don't fight hate with hate. You fight it by becoming unshakably yourself. A person of peace in a chaotic world. A person of principle in a world of performance. A person of depth in a culture obsessed with surfaces. And that is rare. So here's what I invite you to do. If this video spoke to you, if something in it helped you see a part of your life more clearly, don't let that clarity fade. Leave a comment below and share a word or phrase that captures what you're taking with you today. If you're unsure what to write, just type peacefulness. That one word says it all. And if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It's not just for update seats, your quiet commitment to choosing awareness over autopilot, depth over distraction. Finally, I've left 2 more videos here for you. They go even deeper into the kinds of questions we've wrestled with today. I hope you'll stay on this path of growth and resilience. Because in the end, that's the real journey, not trying to change others, but transforming how you respond to them. Live wisely, live quietly, live with strength. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for choosing to grow. This journey of self-mastery doesn't end with one video, it continues with every choice you make, every boundary you hold, and every truth you live. Until next time, stay grounded, stay strong, and as always, live stoic.